Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever in the world you might be joining us from. My name is Elena Stavrevska. I'm currently working at the London School of Economics and Political Science, so I'm joining today from London, and I will be the moderator of today's event. The event is titled, as you probably know, The Impact of COVID-19 on Women Scientists in the Western Balkans. What you don't know is that this is just the first of a series of webinars organized by the British Council as part of their Women in Science Resilience Programme. So the COVID-19 pandemic and the consequent public health response of lockdowns and curfews has brought into sharp relief the constraints faced by women in academia across the board. What studies from around the world have shown is that women scientists are facing additional constraints as a result of COVID-19. So these range from the added burden and responsibilities of working from home, through to the fact that fewer women scientists are being quoted as experts on COVID-19, all the way to far fewer women being part of the cohort producing new knowledge on the pandemic, and fewer women publishing. These analyses across disciplines show that women's publishing rate has fallen relative to men's amid the pandemic. So none of these constraints are really new. Earlier research has confirmed that women academics generally carry larger teaching burdens, have relatively little time for research and publication compared to their male colleagues, many of whom do not carry equivalent domestic responsibilities. That said, however, this seminar or this webinar starts with a curiosity about what the situation has been in the Western Balkans, especially because some would argue that historically the Western Balkans, most of the Western Balkans doesn't start from the same background in terms of women in science as some of the other countries where the research has been produced, the research I cited previously. So today I have the distinct honor of being joined by three speakers, women scientists in three different scientific fields: social scientists, sciences, technical sciences, and natural sciences, working in three different countries in the region, namely Kosovo, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Montenegro. First, we have Dr. Vjosa Krasniqi, who is a sociologist and an associate professor at the Faculty of Philosophy at the University of Pristina. Vjosa holds a PhD in social work from the University of Ljubljana, a master in science in gender development and globalization from the London School of Economics and Political Science, as well as a Bachelor of Arts degree in philosophy and sociology from the University of Pristina. Her research interests focus on gender, nation building, human rights, post-war justice, and social policy. Welcome, Vjosa. Then we have Dr. Yasmin Kahasich Delawic, who is an associate professor at the computer science faculty of the University Sarajevo School of Science and Technology in Bosnia and Herzegovina. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree in mathematics from the University of New Hampshire, a Master of Science in computer science from Brown University, and a PhD in engineering from Warwick University. Her research interests are in the field of artificial intelligence and data science, and she's especially interested in applications to medicine and microbiome data in particular. And last but not least, we have Dr. Gordana Lashovich, who is a physicist and a full professor at the Faculty of Science and Mathematics in Podgorica, in Montenegro. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree in physics from the University of Podgorica, a Master of Science and a PhD degree in physics from the University of Ljubljana. So Vjosa and Gordana have studied at the same university at some point. She completed her postdoctoral studies at Humboldt University in Berlin, and Gordana's current research interests are in high energy physics. She's also leading Montenegro's participation in scientific collaboration RD50 at the European Organization for Nuclear Research, also known as CERN. Now, before we get started, a couple of housekeeping rules. Today's event is planned to last about 90 minutes, with the first 60 minutes or so dedicated to the speakers addressing the core questions around which the webinar has been organized. And then we'll have 30 minutes or so for Q&A. The audience members will remain muted and without their camera turned on throughout the webinar, but you have a chance to ask questions, and please do so in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. You can do this while our speakers are talking or at the very end, and I will convey your questions to the speakers. I will also kindly ask the speakers to remain muted when they're not speaking. And the final point is that today's webinar will be recorded, and the recording will be available via the British Council channels in due course. Now, without further ado, let's get started. So the first question that I have for our speakers is, it's more of an invitation to reflect on what challenges, if any, they have personally faced and professionally as women scientists in their respective countries as a result of the pandemic. Let's start with Vjosa, then we'll go to Yasmin, and then we'll go to Gordana, and then we'll have another round of questions. So Vjosa, the virtual floor is yours. Vjosa? Vjosa, could we maybe go to Yasminka and then we'll come back to you? Yes. Yasminka, is that okay?
Sure, of course. Okay. Yes, I can try. If my connection is gonna withheld. Yes, so thank you very much for the invitation to be a person to speak at this wonderful forum. First of all, I'm so happy to meet all these wonderful ladies from the region who have this interest to support women in science. And I'm always also happy to talk about science, and I'm always also happy to talk about what we can do to empower more women to make greater scientific contribution and get recognized for their scientific contributions. Can you hear me fine? Is my connection withholding? Yes? Okay, perfect. Okay, so to start off, the question is, how has this challenge that we are all going through influenced me personally? So in terms of what's happening, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, well, the thing is, it's hard to talk about how the situation has influenced the women scientists before we talk about first how it has influenced science in general. In terms of everything is pretty much the same, in terms of not being able to travel around, so we cannot network, we cannot go to conferences and so forth. The additional challenge that has been posed to us is that we have this local funding that's available for research, and unfortunately, due to the situation, the funding has been greatly reduced, and most of it has been given to cover the costs of having the lockdown and having cover the salaries of people and who haven't been able to make anything during this pandemic. So it's really harder to find the funding, and of course I can tell you in the previous year when we did have the full funding. We don't have gendered analysis of the data when the funding is given out, but I took the data myself and I performed the gender analysis. So there was a group of projects that had been awarded the funding. Then there was a group of projects who passed the threshold but were not awarded the funding, and then there were groups of projects that did not, even meet the threshold. So then when you look at the projects that did receive the funding, the majority are male, while the projects that did pass the threshold, they did have all the components that were needed, but like some subjective evaluation that was never explained anywhere, majority of those were female projects, So I was hoping, that in this new funding, we would be able to go more with this gender mainstreaming and these kinds of statistics where we would be able to uncover these possible biases. But this, is of course not on the agenda. There is like far more important problems at this point. And then maybe personally, how this pandemic has influenced my research work. So on March 10th, which was the last possible day it was legal, I managed to organize the Women in Data Science conference in Sarajevo. So the Women in Data Science is this association from Stanford University, where they try to network and bring awareness to opportunities to women in data science. So we managed to organize this great event where we created good base for discussion on data science, but also give visibility to wonderful women who are performing great work in industry, in academia, but also in our governmental organizations, applying data science to create great solutions for us. But then, the pandemic has started, and so what I personally managed to do is organize the first general data science conference. It was organized within the Mediterranean Forum just past October. And it was very successful. We had participants from all over the world. We literally, started and it was a mixed audience. I mean, it wasn't just female scientists, but the team was data science. But I must tell you, having this WIDS experience at the beginning of the pandemic, that we had better numbers of women participating in the program committee, with the papers in the conference, and all the different kinds of bodies. But the conference was very successful. We managed to get a lot of people from Australia, US, all over Europe, and so forth. And I think the COVID kind of helped us, because with the technology and accessibility that technology has given us and so forth, and with this new normal of having virtual conferences, we actually managed to collect great scientific work during this time. So I think to speak about my personal experience, it wouldn't be fair not to bring up that I have 3 small children, and this has course in my personal experience with this pandemic a lot. They all 3 of school age, and with this, and I know a lot of female scientists also have children. Some have, and then a lot of the times the burden, of the schoolwork and also on sorts of things is not quite well shared, amongst the wife and the husband, or mom and a dad, whatever, 2 parents, whatever gender they might have been. So, and the thing is, with my 3 kids, it's even if we share it, it's still a huge challenge. So online schooling has been really, really tough. My youngest one was the 1st grader. So with the online school, I basically had to be a 1st grade teacher in addition to everything else I was doing, or actually share the 1st grade teacher role with my husband. So that has been perhaps the greatest challenge, and but also it had its reward, because what I say, I never had been able to spend that much time with my kids, and I like to joke that this pandemic has actually helped me get to know my kids, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to spend so much time and really share some of very, very precious moments that have happened. So I think that's enough for sort of introduction from me, and maybe we can hear more from my colleagues, and I'm really looking forward to hear about their experiences.
Excellent, thank you, Yasmin, and thank you for bringing in a bit of a positive aspect of it as well. Vjolca, can we try now if the... Okay, Gordana, let's go to you now, if that's okay, and then we'll come back to Vjolca in the end.
Well, thank you for invitation to join this wonderful panel. So to answer this question, actually, I think the question can be answered from many perspectives and taking into account the future of the future of the science we do, and also the type of the scientists we are, because the way we deal with the problems also depends on our personality and also how we are organized and how big support we have, also not only from our family, but also from the collaborators. So I think what is important is also how actually we deal with restrictions and combining this with the pile of the duties, work, and how we do actually sorting problems globally, not only locally. And I think that all my life, actually, I'm mastering how to fix problems, partially because I'm coming from the Balkan. We had a lot of problems during the past, and not to accept limits, moved boundaries and challenging, which actually our society is imposed globally and also locally, or because we belong to some national borders, or because of our past. But also, I think we also a little bit struggling by rigidity of our countries, and sometimes with not really openness or open minds of those who has power to decide. So I think what is very important to have a growth mindset when we are dealing with the problems, and also to accept that as a woman we have to balance, also to give priority sometimes to our children, and that when we fail and we think that we fail, actually it's not failure, it is just another path we are growing up with our children and with the circumstances. So I think whenever it is going, and if it is not as we would like, in our scientific projects or in science, I think we have just to take it as another advantage or another opportunity to grow up and put next time better things. So I think that actually, when I talk about, I think I have personally, I am lucky because, first of all, when we talk about that, I think there are differences. We have to think about also the age of the woman scientist when we talk about that. Because I'm senior scientist and I built my relation to my collaborator and also strong link, international link last 30 years. So now actually I a lot rely to my friends and colleagues from Ljubljana, and also in the meantime I built strong relations to Italy, to Czech Republic and to others, which actually helped me a lot when I was working during the COVID. Some Montenegro scientists feel essentially stuck, unable to care some experience because of the COVID. And I think this can be really frightening feeling and mixed with frustrations and insecurity feeling, especially for young persons, young women who has actually to take care about short-term contracts and to have, or how they will be promoted to the next university title, etc. So my answer, actually, when I'm talking about that, it's really opinion. I mean, it's based on my experiences, because it's based on my own experience, and it might really differs from others in my country. In particular, because I'm working in the frontier science, and what I do, my research is of importance and priorities, which is in the line European Union strategy for development and research detectors, which are important for CERN in order to enable new discoveries. So my work in some way is supported globally. So then you are less vulnerable, less fragile when you start new research, or you are a young researcher who has to to develop own path and to develop a network. So as I said, I'm senior scientist and have established long career. I mean, about last 30 years, actually, I'm working in particle physics. Recently, I'm leading Montenegro in, actually for the first time in history, Montenegro took part in developing detectors, which is actually a huge responsibility to me. And this also brings me, I have to be very productive actually to act and not allowed actually to be vulnerable and fragile when some institutional or country lockdowns are there, because I have to think about also that our national program is going further, and also the researchers who are part of the team, that they take part. So I think we have budgets. I mean, we had money for the researcher to go abroad, but because mobility from June, due to traveling ban, our researchers couldn't go. So what I did actually, because it was clear that we can't do on national level and national labs cannot be further development, I quickly established a link to Czech Republic, to now really world leading European ELI laser facility. And actually they became my host. So I brought some idea, and we started to develop their completely new and novel, and it will be very unique apparatus, so new technique, So I partnered with Jožo Stefan, I partnered with National Institute of Italy, and with Czech Science, Academy of Science. So we all collaborated, and when our students, I also in August, I applied for user, to use actually, to get open access to research infrastructure there, so I can work there and use their facilities actually, and to build, because we are also financially start to struggle. And so we use their resources, but they were so wonderful, really so supportive, that also they bought a lot of things. They invested a lot in this apparatus. And last 3 days, we had last week we had RD50 workshop, and I was very happy. Really, it was very successful time, extraordinary. Because what was important that our one student, he should go there, but he couldn't because of the traveling ban. So even Eli wanted to pay everything for him for travel. I mean, for traveling and also accommodation. We couldn't do that because it was traveling ban. Okay, for me it's a little bit different because I can also stay in UK, so I can actually travel around. But our young researchers were really a woman in particular. I mean, they were sucked. But regarding the research, which also they collected data for us and for our researcher, was that their commitment. I mean, the people from Eli, I mean, our colleagues, experts, they were so committed to the work. They understood the situation. I coordinated all online using this technology. So it was a remotely coordinated project, and we are still developing that. And this was one thing which I think works very well, but just because of the strong support of the international, global, I mean, community, and also people who knows how to be devoted to the work and to be committed and to feel responsibility to finish things, and also to share gifts, because they really, I think their work was kind of gift to us because we couldn't be there, but then they took data, they did also some development in the setup. The second thing actually which I found really extraordinary was, because I'm teaching also basic measurement in physics, I used the COVID to teach students actually how to use, how to measure their outcomes, learning outcomes, placing projects in the context. So actually that they know if their knowledge is applicable, because sometimes they are gaining knowledge, but they do not apply it, and it's not actually towards the societal, to creating solutions for societal challenges. So last year, and I published also two papers, which is based on my work with the students. So we did a lot of like non-contact dispensers, so for disinfection, or we built some sensor based on ultrasound, one setup based on ultrasound, which measure and warn people not to touch their face, so they would not be contaminated by COVID. Or we did also some setups for deaf people, so that because they cannot hear, they can see on apparature some signs of warning if someone is coughing or sneezing. We also did some setup for blind people. So if they cannot really measure, see people around, but there are some setups that can measure if there's people around which has some temperature. So this was actually very fruitful, because I think for the first time really students saw how they can actually, we had targets, I mean, on the subjects, but the targets are achieved through the applying, actually, to putting everything in the context in the current situation. So really, I think it depends how we deal with the problems.
Thank you very much, Gordana. Yes, this indeed provides us with a different perspective, that the seniority in terms of where women scientists are in their career also has a role to play in this intersection of career stage and the gendered environment that we all work in is something to be considered. Violta, let's do a third luck here and see if we can figure this out and hear from you.
Thank you, Elena. I hope now it works. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, so I would like to start with a small presentation, I think, on this very personal experience on how to look at COVID and the impact of COVID on women scientists. First, I would like to begin with saying that COVID-19 pandemic is a novel condition for at the planetary level that induced a big and also marks a big disruption. That the situation has become surreal, but also it has increased uncertainty. Perhaps the personal experience since March 2020 until today has been the one between balance and adaptation. So how to find the balance between teaching and the research, home life, and also from the new rules that are imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic. So the pandemic has pushed us to move to transgress boundaries, to rethink our self professionally, but also in the everyday life exchanges about the sociality, but also family and family relations. So the transformations that we have witnessed since the beginning of the pandemic have also pushed us to transform approaches and practices of teaching and research. And the bigger change, I think also as the previous speakers have pointed out, has been the shift from teaching in person and class-based to remote web-based modes. There was a kind of a twilight zone until, for example, my university, the University of Pristina, shifted to online teaching in the third week of March, and since then we have conducted all our teaching through web-based web-based platforms. So second, I think, is that not only that you switch technologically in the way how you conduct your teaching and also research, but in the context of teaching, you have to readapt, to redesign approaches and strategies for online classrooms, because as it is, this has been a totally new novel condition and novel that applied, that we also have to reconsider and to adapt and redesign approaches and strategies to teaching. So to rethink approaches and strategies to achieve learning outcomes and also to address the needs of students and their communities, because COVID-19 has shown us that the university cannot live in its own bubble, but the university has to engage also through different with publics within the society, and also to address the needs of students, but also of their communities. So. Yes, that this shift from online teaching, from physical classroom-based teaching to online teaching is just one also dimension of the disruptions. Also, for example, that lots of academic exchanges and dialogues and also collaboration of different research projects have been disrupted by COVID-19. And as we all know, science is vocation that is based on peer-based exchanges through conferences, symposiums, and workshops. Lockdown and social distancing has worked against that. For me personally, several events like conferences, panels, symposiums were cancelled from March 2020 to date. I think a couple of them that were events to take place either in Europe or the United States. So I have never experienced this before, and also as the life of academic is also to be to engage in dialogue and discussions with your peers around the world on the issues and themes that we deal with. So the inability to participate to annual conferences or for work has been one of the biggest disruptions. So some of these conferences have been postponed. to take place next year, some of them to an unspecified date, but we don't know perhaps how and when these conferences will take place. This will be contingent also on the responses and how the situation with COVID-19 continues at the global level. Another I think way in how, from my personal experience, and I think this also the previous speakers have pointed out, is also this blurring of the private and the public space, so that the classroom becomes the home, and the home also an office. So, and practically today, for example, for this webinar, I'm at my home. So my home has become a room for conferences, webinars, classrooms, and many other academic and professional activities. Yes, perhaps this is also a gender issue that impacts the life of the scientists, and also on the daily basis on how we also engage in academia, how we teach, but also how we conduct research. So and especially the blurring of the private and the public. But and here I would like also to point out that not all women are the biggest challenges is also to manage this blurring of the responsibilities between the private and the public, and I think this affects women in different ways, but overall it has an imprint on gender, and especially on how women engage in science and about their everyday professional activity in academia and in research and in publication. But the idea not to being able to travel and also to attend conferences, seminars and symposiums is something that perhaps I had never thought about that I would experience in my life. And yes, but in the meantime, also the challenges for adopting new digital platforms for meeting and sharing experiences. Yes, that perhaps the COVID-19 has also opened up a whole new way and a space for more exchanges that take place online, but not in person. And I would stop here because I would really like also to address the other two questions and to see perhaps that that there are many challenges that that COVID-19 has posed and impacted, especially women in science. But I think there are also some positive blueprints and opportunities to extend and also to enhance women's engagement within science. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Vilta. And I really appreciate how all three of you actually spoke not just of challenges, but also opportunities. And especially because all three of you also mentioned the restriction on travel and the impossibility of attending conferences in person. So then kind of removing that whole aspect of networking. But at the same time, especially in terms of funding, the restriction of funding, I think with the new normal, whatever normal might mean in the circumstances, opportunities, and especially because all three of you also mentioned the restriction on travel. We now also have the opportunity to actually attend events that otherwise we might not be able to attend. So I appreciate how all three of you spoke about the opportunities that have been brought forth as well. Now, given I'm mindful of the time, so I will actually combine the second and the third question, especially because in your first, in responding to the first question, all of you also touched on this of how the COVID-19 crisis, or multiple crises, some would say, not just the public health, but also economic crisis, have affected women scientists more broadly in your experience. So I'll combine that question with the third question of how has this affected previously existing practices and systems in the region's academia or the academia in the country where you work, in the specific field in which you work. Gordana, let's start with you, and then we'll go to Vjolca and then Yasminka.
Thank you. So I think if I talk about that and I want to address this question, I think there are two things which actually overlapping, and it's not really, you can't put really boundaries between when you try to look from different perspectives, because if you do some science which is more locally, or you are more stuck or limited locally, then perhaps there are different rules and you will experience different conditions, and also this affect your future work. But when you work more globally, as actually it's field where I work, it's hydrogen physics, which is centered at CERN and future colliders, which is globally important, which is because all these results will enable new discoveries, and then the wider community of scientists will share it, and furthermore, new technologies will be developed. Then is in this case, we actually, my work or my research is extremely well internationally and globally connected and increasingly collaborative these days, in particular enhanced by digital technology. So actually this enable me, my female students or female researcher, to work remotely and coordinate, even building new setups, and put further actually new ideas, which are also very expensive, but with help of others, you can build it if you know how to mobilize resources. So I think what I learned from all this, if I'm reflective on all this, I think what is important actually that COVID give me time actually to be reflective, to see actually how to make actually very effective your time, cost effective, and how to be efficient, and how quickly to mobilize resources and utilize all potential opportunities which you have if you want to reach somewhere. So I think what women has to learn, females, and I'm trying to also to show this example to my students, that what is important actually that we should not play on the fragility. I mean, we have actually to act. So when you can, I think it's quite okay if we ask for help from other collaborators or from other research institutions. So what is important is just go further and not give up. So use situation, accept situation as it is, accept that we are also, because we have children, we are fragile when their needs has to be met. But it is also fine to put away sometimes our job and then be more efficient in the next time. And regarding what also I think last few months helped me a lot, but I also I think change institutionally, because what we need actually that I think after COVID things will be different for sure. Some things which works before will not work now, or we will apply different things. And what is important is actually to make institutional change. And what I saw that our students, female, which actually we have mostly female students in physics, interesting, they became more entrepreneurially oriented. So when we start to do these projects, which are actually showing some setup which can be used, their self-esteem was increased. And also they now they want really to be patent oriented. They want to make something, to build something. And I think all these things, how we now applying science and play with technology and co-creating new knowledge, I think it's very important also for building this new way of the leadership scientists, actually young female leaderships. So what I'm trying actually to do through all my work, I mean scientific through collaborations, and what I'm now putting for the way I'm teaching, I'm doing project, it's also to build new generation of the female leaderships. They will be able, after finishing university, to rely really on their knowledge, to set up their business, and to make their own connections and work further. So I think we can learn a lot from the situations that happen to us, and how we deal with that, and circumstances and other things. So for sure, I think that in future, new approaches will be applied, but we need also institutional help, because without institutional change, and I think they will not be sustainable. I mean, all these solutions which are now put forward will not be sustainable if there is also no resources for the sustainability of these approaches.
Great, thank you, Gordana. Vjota, let's go to you now.
Yes, I would like to say that about your second question, Elena, that how COVID-19 crisis affected women scientists' work. I would say perhaps there are four that I could bring forward right now. One is related to research and also the mechanics and how to conduct research during COVID. I think, of course, as the speakers may have pointed out, there is a different disciplinary difference here in terms of the ways how women in science, and depending on the science that they are working from. Second is yes, because of the overall there is in Kosovo there is deficit of grants and research funding, and especially research funding that is oriented towards women in science. So institutionally looking, even before COVID-19, there were opportunities for grants were very limited. So with the COVID-19 and restructuring of the budgets, especially for education and for science, I think this impacts at large all women in science, regardless of whether they are in the natural sciences or humanities or social sciences. So one of the challenges and the impacts also was in terms of conducting research, and also the ways of data collection. For example, from the perspective of disciplinary perspectives of the, let's say, qualitative methodologies in social sciences, I think this also, the COVID-19 may have had an impact on women within social sciences who work within that research paradigm. And secondly, if the research is delayed, if there is no funding, this has also a direct impact on publications, and publications, as we know, impact also promotion of women within academia, because it's without publications, also without research, without publication, also promotion in academia gets prolonged, and also hampers women in academia and women in science. So because there is already a gender gap in academia and in society, and I think the gender gap also is not something that is it applies or is present only in the Balkans, or but also widely also in Europe and in many places around the world, and that gender equality in academia and gender equality also in science is an issue that is being also addressed by many different institutions nationally, but also at the transnational and global level. And when we're thinking about universities, universities are no exception. And I think women in the universities and also in science face many different problems that are gender specific. Even because when we look at the formal rules and practices, even in the situations before, I would say, if you can say that, before March 2020, before the COVID pandemics, also the formal rules discriminated, even if they look neutral, gender neutral, they discriminate against women. And I think the COVID-19 may have magnified systemic gender equalities, even though I'm very much aware of that universities and that have adopted, for example, gender policy at some level, but very often that only remains in the realm of the formal rules, but is not being implemented. So I think this until COVID-19, we were discussing about how to close the gap, the gender gap in science and gender gap in academia. Now, since March 2020, now we have to reconsider also what this gender gap meant, and also in what way COVID-19 may have deepened or may have also shifted in some way the gender gap. And I think here it's important to look at also the gender gap, and also to think, not to look at women in science as one category where all women would fit into that, but rather I would say, like, take gender as an analytical tool and look at how do analysis of the system from the gender perspective, and also see where different women are positioned in science and also in academia, because the impact of COVID-19 and the challenges for women in science may be different, diverse. And this, I mentioned one, it could be because of the disciplinary from where they work, but also it boils down to age. For example, junior women in academia and in science may experience different challenges as a result of COVID-19, compared, for example, to senior researchers or senior women in science and in academia. And then also, for example, women with small children or or single mothers who are in science, they also may have additional burden and additional challenges just because of the position, rank that they have within academia or at the career, if they are in the early career, or if they are in a more serious position, and that would also impact the challenges and difficulties they may experience during COVID. But overall, I think we should we should never somehow take away our analysis from the structures itself, and also from the institutions, and in what way science institutions, research, and academia and academic programs, and also institutions address gender issues, address gender equality, and to what extent also awareness about gendered, how the institutions are gendered, and also in what way COVID-19 may have deepened those gendered institutions that would favor, for example, one specific category of women within academia, while it would have a totally different effect, and much graver on other women, especially junior researchers and newcomers in the science and in academia. So for this, I think yes, it's important to go deeper into an analysis, and to exclude this category of women, not to group all women into one category, but to see whose women, which women, at what career level, and also from which disciplines, how they are affected, in what way, and also what are the challenges that lie ahead for them, as we are thinking about how not only to close the gap that before the COVID-19, but also to think at closing the gap, and also to remedy the deepening of that gap as a consequence of COVID-19.
Wonderful. Thank you for the elaboration, Vilce. So, Yasmin, the same question to you before we go to the Q&A. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can address whichever aspect of the two questions combined. Mm-hmm. Let's hear your perspective.
So yeah, wonderful to hear from my colleagues and their different perspectives. They're raising all sorts of issues in my head as well. But what I was thinking, I think it's it's too early. We don't have analyzed evidence to speak about how this pandemic has really influenced the female scientists. We have previous experiences, we have previous studies, and we have sort of hypotheses where we think, you know, what could have influenced in a positive and negative way. But for example, in computer science, you know, we also talked about Balkans perhaps not being the worst of the you know world, and we have quite a few actually young females that are entering. And actually in Bosnia, this number, we have almost parity in terms of students at the undergraduate level. And we have these wonderful educated computer scientists, and they very at this higher positions in either academia or in industry. We somehow, you know, educate them. They have these great skills, but we lose them, right? But now the question is, how has this new normal influenced? You know, what can we expect to happen? And in computer science, well, I think for gender in general, but you know, I always kind of try to limit myself to my own experience. This unconscious bias is really what makes a huge difference, because you will find it will be really hard to find in any of our universities any rules that you could pinpoint to be explicitly biased, you know, towards any gender. But then when it comes to implementation of the different policies, different activities, and if you do any kind of gendered analysis, you see that there's bias, you know. And the new normal, we use a lot of technology. We leave a lot of traces around of what's happening. So basically, even today's event, you know, we know how many people have been present, how many male, how many females. When we're teaching, you know, we know a lot more. We can, you know, record a lot more about what has happened during our class rather than when we are doing it in person. Also at the conferences. So what I'm aiming as that we're leaving a lot of data, and I think this data is really invaluable for us to analyze this current situation, analyze the current trends. And I think what is important is that we always put in any sort of analysis always this gender component, to not just see, you know, how this conference has functioned, but then how has it functioned from a female and male perspective, and whether the females have equal contribution, way to participate, and all of these things. So you know, fortunately, unfortunately for me, depends on what the situation, but I'm always an optimist, you know, and in every crisis I see an opportunity. So I'm hoping that now the data that we gather about how we have behaved in these times can actually help us to discover the patterns that would help this great female talent that we don't utilize in our communities, and most of the time goes to waste and not to better all our lives. So they will come up with the new ways to utilize it and make the world a better place. So that's all I wanted to say, actually.
Great, thank you very much. I really appreciate how you all highlight different aspects from your respective fields. So indeed, actually, now we not only have more data, but we have data that can much more easily be disaggregated. Thank you for pointing that out, Yasmin, and the importance of a gender analysis, as we also were saying, of this data as well. Right. So now I will move on to the Q&A. We have a couple of questions. I will start with a question from Nina, who asks, how can this experience be used to push forward digitalization and greater accessibility of scientific resources and education? I will ask each of you to maybe reflect on it for about 5 minutes. I'll start with Violca first, and then Gordana, and then Yasmin, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Yes.
And then Gordana, and then Yasmin, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you. I think COVID-19 has brought into our mind and our conversations at the universities on how to digitalize, and also but this brings also the issue around access to resources, and especially access to COVID-19 has brought into an education to our mind. And so the discussion about online teaching, about academia moving into more digitalized institution, I think has both benefits, but also there have been many reservations staged about the full digitalization of the higher education system. If I would say for myself that I am in favor of classroom-based teaching, that I see a value in education that is face-to-face and that happens in the real time, in real work, and also at the centers. Physical classrooms. So, but at the same time, also I'm aware that the digital power is also directing the life of the universities and the science in itself. And it definitely technology here and digitalization has an important role. So, but the question is about the access to digital sources, access to online sources. I think this, while the positive transformation, I think, is that more and more students, universities, and also the society at large and stakeholders are relying on digital sources. But still, we are very much aware of that access to many of those sources is not free. So it's and this then boils down to the question on how to make that as part of the education policy and science policy and part of the larger public policy to enable that this is distributed equally for all those who are within the higher education sphere, but also in science. What we have seen in COVID, especially on COVID-related medical research and publishing, is really quite something. It's impressive because you see how much of research experience, scientific knowledge, but also how universities and research centers around the world can come together, collaborate, and share research. But this has to be, the issue is how to distribute that equally, so that also countries that have less money for scientific research, that they are be able to catch up and through digitalization and accessibility of scientific resources and education. This is also a call for the governments and for the also European institutions and at large, and the publics at large, to bring education and science into one of the key priorities of the public policy. I mean, science cannot live in itself isolated, but it's also part of the public policy, and the states have the responsibility to make this happen and to provide better resources through digital platforms and more resources on education as the staple of human development and social development, also for the post-COVID recovery response.
Great, thank you very much, Vilca. Gordana, so the question is, how can this experience be used to push forward digitalization and greater accessibility of scientific resources in education? Let's hear your take on it.
I think there is a lot of actual opportunities and a lot of ideas actually we develop some of them already now. I think what I'm going to do, and I plan to initiate, and I hopefully our university will accept it, and we will be supported for that, is actually to for co-creation of some knowledge-based platform for students, actually, which will be shared platforms where they are sharing resources, digital, but also Internet of Things, so that students are easily actually that somehow older students, our generation, they are sharing their knowledge and helping to others. So this would be one thing which actually works very well, because when I teach online, it was very useful that they function the way they help to each other and that they share knowledge. I think what is very important is to get that co-creation of the together knowledge, and where students are also thinking about them as producer, not only someone who is actually we are putting into their head, but they also co-create together inside the group, but also co-creating knowledge together with us teachers, so that actually that teaching and teachers or students at university, but also in the secondary schools, high school, that they see each other as partners, where actually everyone can learn from another. So I think what is important in this actually, where we are going, this economy for knowledge, share knowledge, and new economy for where learning based on the learning and economy, where actually an institution is actually learning organization, is how we learn from each other, because now students are learning also from many resources, and they can also share with us. This is one thing. Second thing is actually that I think we have to develop, and I found actually that all these big, huge, I mean, rich international research institutes and infrastructures, they are willing really to share their resources. I mean, we also thought about that to make a lot of video materials actually to share and to distribute to other universities. How, for example, because while we built this setup, we found a lot of, things which we have to learn, and many researchers which are working in the same field, they do not understand how to do that. But when you are doing a video and making this presentation, video is good things, and sharing these video materials can help also to other researchers, young females or young people, when they are entering this field to learn more about that, because there's a lot of hidden knowledge which actually they do not gain quickly, or they cannot, and they are, also because of the background, all universities do not offer the same knowledge to students once they are going abroad, so they sometimes they can be frustrated. So I think this is also one thing where digitalization and all these resources can be used really to make society where based on the gift, where you have experts which are able, capable, and willing actually to make as gift their resources and share with other communities. And I think a lot of, really, I talk about with Eli in Czech, which are now leading facility for lasers. They are willing to do a lot of things in that way, and to do a lot of for society, because what is important really to make platform to use all this data, which we did now, and we saw it, they work well, to make platforms where it can be shared and really given as a gift. So I think there is a lot of actually ways. Also the data, by measuring of the data, we make a lot of repositories. So this big data can be also shared and further developed platforms and open access. And but we need also training for that, because to use data from all these research centers, one has also to train the students and other researchers how to use it. It's not just to give data, we have also to provide not only access, but also the knowledge to use it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gordana. Indeed, it's not just about accessibility of resources, but also additional training that might come with those possibilities. Yasmin, what is your take on this? And I think, as someone working in computer science, you might have an even more particular take on the question.
Yes. Well, I think Nina, this was a very good question, because perhaps the greatest revolution that has been started with this COVID is this online education. And if we know, particularly in our region, how slowly any sort of educational reform goes, to see that our schools have been able to switch to an online, mode of functioning within just a couple of weeks. It's just amazing, especially I know like British Council is doing a lot of projects in education, and it takes so many projects, and so much to produce any kind of a cultural change. And this pandemic has made this remote work and online learning completely completely acceptable, and for me, I'm very happy. I function very well in this online environment, and for the kind of courses that I teach, I really like the online environment. It enables me to combine different kinds of media and to demonstrate abstract, I teach, for example, algorithms or artificial intelligence, and there's lots of abstractions and things that you have to imagine, in order to understand how to put all these pieces together. And with online teaching, I can actually use different kinds of media and get somehow closer to the students rather than I just have when I have slides and a whiteboard in front of me. So for me, I've been a better teacher, since I've been using the online tools. But also, I know my students have been using, different kinds of tutorials and tools to figure out how to study even on their own. So this has been started even before the pandemic. They go to YouTube videos or different kinds of online learning platforms where they could try to find a different perspective on how to understand something. But then, as far as my students go, I periodically, talk to them and ask them, how is this online learning and so forth. And for the older students, it's totally okay. For the third, fourth year students, they already figure out, the undergraduate, what the university is all about, and they already have the guidance, and now they are more about positioning themselves for the way out of the university, making connections with the industry, and they actually, a lot of them already have jobs. So in the third and fourth year, it's actually good for them to be able to manage their time better, to be able to fit in a busy schedule both their lectures and their perhaps work obligations. But then for the first and second year students, they just come to university with lots of questions and where is my life leading, and they're looking for any kind of direction, So if you have such students just online, I think it's hard for them. They really they yearn for this contact. They yearn for sort of more informal education rather than just the formal education. So I think, while there's a great value in the society accepting this remote work and accepting this online learning as a valid way that we can use to, in some circumstances, be even more efficient in teaching. Especially for the students who are just starting, a new study cycle. I think we cannot go without this face-to-face lectures and more human connection subjects. So that's my experience with this.
Yes, thank you. That's a very nice summary of the pros and cons of how fast we've learned to use Zoom and Teams and to make what seemed impossible last year possible within a few days. Mm-hmm. We have one more question, and then we'll slowly wrap up. So Amila writes to us, great to see the lineup of women scientists. Thank you for sharing. I wonder, she says, with the obstacles women face without a pandemic, do you see that this interruption caused by the pandemic may result in fewer women entering science in the next several years? This is a question for the region, obviously. Or would you expect quite the opposite? Looking at the ongoing experiences of your young graduates, possibly. So now let's start maybe with Yasmin, if you don't mind, actually, I'll start with you, then go to Gordana, then Vjolca.
Okay, yes, that's fine. Looking at what makes it harder for women to be in academia, I already mentioned it's not something that is there are no explicit biases, or if there are, we can easily solve those. But what we have ahead of us is this hidden enemy, this unconscious bias that unfortunately all of us have, including me. Okay, so I took a test. And of course, I would never say that math and computer science are either for boys or for girls. But when I took this test, implicit bias test, I'm actually slightly biased, and I think that technical sciences are more for boys than for girls. And my conscious self would never, would hear something like that. So the culture around us, the world that we live in, is just bias. And we must face that when we see a woman that is in computer science, she just needs to build our trust. She just has to show so much more, So if you see a guy and he says he's in computer science, I'm just taking computer science, you assume he's competent, And if it goes otherwise, that you might think he's incompetent. For the women, it's the other way around. You assume she's incompetent, then she has to work very hard to get to, So how's the pandemic going to change this? So what we have ahead of us is a big cultural change, the same as this online learning is a big cultural change. But I'm not sure that pandemic is going to so easily fix this cultural change. And I unfortunately don't see an easy way out. But what I think is important that we talk about these things, and this webinar that we have today is an example. So we have to speak about how is it to be a woman in science. We have to I'm great that Gordana said she doesn't have a problem with females in physics, which is somehow strange, but that's because they have a great role model in her, So that's one of the most important things. So we just have to keep doing more of this, and actually question the unconscious bias that we all have, and do the data desegregation, do gender mainstreaming, do everything that we possibly can, so we don't lose this female talent. So we have all these wonderful females that are coming, and we just have to make sure there is room for them, basically.
Thank you, Yasmin. Gordana?
Yeah, it's really difficult to predict what's going to be in the future, but I can say something that actually I see regarding the change in the attitude which I see in the female students. And I agree. I mean, if we want to produce female students who are more competitive and more self-contained, we need to give them competencies. I think what is important is we are all confident when we have competencies, and also when we achieve some results, it gives us strength to go further. So we need also to, I think, to give to students a way that they build something, show something, apply what they know, and this really give boost. It gives them chance to go further. So actually, what I saw, where I saw the change, and I think if I can predict and if I can trust my feelings, is that we will have more female who will enter the science, and even this frontier science, which is quite difficult because, I mean, for high energy physics, you need really to know the programming, science, engineering. It's becoming more interdisciplinary. Now, science it's not really, it cannot be now in the folders place, but it's boundaries are blurred. So we are now entering the science, which is very not only international, but international oriented, but also very interdisciplinary. So what I saw in the students or attitude students, or what made COVID also partially, is that our female students becomes actually more reflective and more productive. And I think, which I haven't seen this before, but last year in particular, I saw it, but maybe because they were more productive or using chances now, while male students were less prone to do such things or to probe, I don't know, but it could be also. So I saw them actually more risk and action taker now, which is actually good. And also this will remove this cultural bias, I mean, between female and male, and affect actually, because now I saw when I'm speaking to them and when they are actually applying for some projects, or because I always push them to apply or for some projects for students or competitions or etc. I saw actually that they do not look really any excuse that they are females or that they want any excuse because there is some possible gender gap. So they want actually to do and to get access and to be accepted on the merit base. So they are trying to avoid any excuse or because they are fragile or because of the gender issue or that they are less capable because they are female. And this is good things, because if we raise or cultivate new generation where actually maybe this gender gap or gender issue will not be emphasized, because when you emphasize something, you're also saying that something is wrong with that. So there are two I think, points or two alternate perspectives we can see how to fix it, or how maybe by emphasizing we are all the time showing that something is wrong, that something is different. So I think we have actually new generation of the students, new generation of females, at least in Montenegro, which they want actually to be accepted based on the merit, based on their success, and they work hard for that. So I hope and I believe and I will work towards that we will have more females, because I think these skills which they are getting through these projects or through this research or being on university, it's also skill for the life. So being capable to finish some project is also the way you are getting skill in your life, how to deal with problems and actually not accept all the time limits, but to try to blur them and to achieve more than actually some limits imposed on you. So I think there are many things we will see or in the future. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Gordana. And now, Violca.
Yes, I would first like to say that, to my opinion, COVID-19 would stall the progress of women in science. But still, I say this because also, as I record a couple of times today, women in the higher education and in science already face a bumpy road and the hurdles that they encounter are manifold. For example, there are different exclusionary practices that discriminate against women, and that they are found, and most of these are structural, but also are at the symbolic levels. For example, the professions and positions of women in academia still remains very much segregated, even though in the recent years we have seen that women are entering also the fields and sciences that were traditionally perceived as male sciences. But just a quick overview, for example, on our daily experiences, also from the research that has been conducted so far. For example, we all witness bias in recruitment procedures, that evaluation committees are mostly comprised by men, that there are no women, that the culture is unfriendly, institutional culture is unfriendly to women, and also lack of access networks, and very important lack of women leaders, mentors, and role models. And finally, also this finding the balance between the private life and family responsibilities, especially for junior researchers, scientists, and early careers in academia. So, to me, all this structural gender inequalities definitely should be also looked at from the structural point of view, but also at the representational level. And I think COVID-19 may stall the progress of gender equality and women's progress in science. And for this, I think it's very important that there are policies within the larger education policy and policy on research that would promote and also support women in science, because we cannot lose the momentum also within these strategies for COVID-19 recovery to address also the issue of women in science and gender equality in higher education and research institutions. But still, I would like to maintain a critical hope that, and also to point to the relevance of leadership in research, in science, and also in higher education, to bring gender also as a policy issue, for gender, to do gender analysis, but also to make gender part of the policy on research and development. So we cannot risk not to bring gender at the center of the post-COVID-19 research and development agenda at the national level, but also international one. But definitely this will have an impact and will stall the progress of women in science.
Thank you, Violca. I will ask actually one more question and then we'll wrap it up, even though I'm mindful of time, but so we might go 5 minutes over the time. Tena Prelec writes, it is so encouraging to hear the positive sides of the digital revolution brought upon us due to the COVID-19 crisis, as well as the undeniable challenges. I was wondering if you could comment as scientists on the politicization of coronavirus task forces that has occurred in several countries of the Western Balkans. What kind of image of scientists do you think this promotes? And who is winning, science or conspiracy theories? So quick responses, like a 1 minute response, if you will. Gordana, I'm going to start with you this time, if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, from the point, I mean, COVID science, and how actually science about COVID was applied and all these measures imposed based on that, I don't know, I think we need time actually to talk about that and to be distant from everything, because I think often some measures were applied, because I often do not know why there was some set regarding some numbers and how some statistics was taken, because also when you report some cases, we do not know what is underlining, why something happened, what kind of the test was, not only test does, but where it was applied. So I think regarding that, how COVID science, I mean, or about science which is related to research on COVID directly, I cannot really say much about that, because we need evidences and we need distance from that and to analyze. But which kind of the scientists or image of the scientists we are building, I hope that it will not be just based on some statistics which is just based on the numbers, but we need really deeper thinking, more deeper way of the thinking about that and the reasons behind. And I hope also that image of the new scientists, or how to say, will be really scientists who will have more wider knowledge, and also who will be very critical how to apply their knowledge, and that the way of the applying knowledge will be really based on the evidences, because a lot what is done now, it's all about predictions and then going back and forward and changing, and different countries affected differently. So I hope that new image of the scientist will be someone who will be who will have more interdisciplinary knowledge, and also more reflective and more critical, and willing to actually to apply to wider community. And also I hope that we will have more female young leadership developed.
Thank you.
That, which I actually.
Yes, that's a very hopeful note. Thank you very much, Gordana. Violca, and then Yasmin, and then we'll close.
Actually, I like this question very much. Thank you. Yeah, I would say that crises overall are a fertile ground for populist and for different and various ethno-nationalisms. And COVID-19 has proved to this that yes, the inabilities of the science to, I guess, or the politics to stay away from science. So I think who is winning in the end, I would like to say that it is science that is based on humanism, that we bring humanism at the center of the research agenda issues, not only related to COVID-19 pandemic, but overall. So in the end, it is this humanist agenda on the science that also will win.
Thank you, Vilza. And Yasminka?
So a very interesting question. I also like it very much. The good thing of this is that science has become the hot topic. So we have never talked about science so much, and so that's a good thing. I agree. Also, there's lots of good things, but then also bad things, conspiracies, and so forth. But I think there is still good number of voices that fight these conspiracies, and we should really amplify those voices. So one thing that makes me happy, is that we have this couple from Germany, the scientists who have participated in this creation of this vaccine that is showing very promising results. And they are the heroes of today. The scientists made big money, saved the world. So I think we've never talked more about science than in the recent period. As far as the politics, and I mean, this is our kind of a standard problem in this region. But we just have to kind of amplify this real scientific voices and give more power to science in our societies.
Excellent. I love how all three of you highlighted the positive aspects of the. Of course, there are challenges, but also the positive aspects of the current moment. There are a few other questions which, unfortunately, we don't have time to get to, and I apologize. I thank those of you who have asked questions, all of you. Thank you very much to the speakers for your invaluable insights, for highlighting your experiences and the knowledge that you have been exposed to, and that as well as being such bright examples for women scientists in the region. I want us to close with another, well, maybe a dose of optimism. So I'm going to ask each of you for about 30 minutes to share what is your one hope for a post-COVID world. I will start with Vilza.
30 seconds, right? Okay.
I will start with Vilza.
Okay, I'm hoping for a post-COVID world that is fairer, that it's where social justice reigns, and respect for human rights and human dignity, and also for gender equality. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Yasminka?
Well, I can just second what Vilza just said, but human rights, we know in this region how important humans rights for us all. Diversity, so including everyone in decision making, and more science. Okay, so those are my wishes.
Excellent, thank you. Gordana?
So I hope for society based on the knowledge and sharing. So actually a lot of knowledge is given by, as kind of gift, but also I hope for a society where science is for peace, and where you have science for peace and towards the society, and more human oriented actually, to be applied to sort out and solve societal issues.
Perfect. Thank you all so much. Thank you everyone for joining today's discussion. Those with the questions we've asked, and those with questions which unfortunately I did not manage to ask today. We will have 3 more webinars in the coming months, so stay tuned to the British Council channels. And please virtually join me in thanking our three speakers today for being so generous with their insights and their knowledge. Thank you very, very much. Bye.
Thank you, Elena, for being a wonderful moderator. Well.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.